You read that title right, folks. In today's video, we're going to talk about getting internal RAW from cameras like Sony's FX30, FX3, FX6, and FX9. Now, I know you're probably sitting there thinking to yourself, how did this come out and not hear anything about it? Well, part of it is because in order to use this in your NLE or your editor, the only editor right now that will accept this Sony RAW format is DaVinci Resolve. This is not technically RAW. You're getting a lot of the features that a lot of us, including myself, use from RAW, like being able to change your ISO in post or being able to change your white balance. Well, you get those features now using the FX30 all the way up to the FX9 in DaVinci Resolve. When it comes to the FX9, the FX6, you can put those files directly into DaVinci Resolve and start editing. When it comes to the FX3 and the FX30, you do have to transcode your files, but the good news is you do it within Sony Catalyst Browse, which is free. In order to do the actual transcoding, you do have to own a physical FX30 or FX3, because when you try to actually do the transcoding, before it lets you do it, you have to put in your model number and the serial number of the camera, and that kind of acts as your code to activate that part of the program. If you've never done it before, first thing they'll let you know, you're going to want to use the actual model name. So an example is for the FX30, it's ILME-FX30, and then in that same sticker is your 7-digit serial code number. There's an article from Alister Chapman that talks about Sony S-Log3, and I'm actually going to pull up the article right here on my phone. I'll also have a link to it in the description below. He talks about how RAW is raw sensor data. It's really more video frames from a sensor that are recorded before they are converted to a colored image. A raw frame is still a picture. It's just that it's a bitmap image made up of brightness values, and each pixel represented by a single brightness code value, rather than a color image where the location on the image is represented by 3 values, red, green, and blue. A raw frame is nothing more than a normal bitmap. All the camera settings, such as white balance, ISO, etc., are baked into the recording, and each pixel only has one value, and one value that will be determined by the way the camera is set up. Nothing you can do in post-production can change what is actually recorded. Here's the juicy part where he says modern cameras, when shooting log or raw, also record metadata that describes how the camera was set when the image was captured. When you have these cameras like the FX30, FX3, whatever, they have the ability to input the metadata into the file where you can then change your ISO and white balance in post, but there needs to be a way for programs to be able to interpret and read and correct that data, and now DaVinci Resolve has that. A good example of a camera that doesn't work though is this A74 here. Now, when you put the footage from this camera into Catalyst Browse, you can actually do stuff like changing the ISO, the white balance, and you can make those changes and then output a file. However, you can't just take the footage from this camera and output the same kind of file that you get from the FX30 and the FX3 and then use that file in DaVinci and change those settings. It seems that DaVinci has to have a way of reading these settings, and it's, at least right now, only reading it from the FX30, the FX3, the FX6, and the FX9. I know I keep saying that a lot, but I want to make it clear that even though cameras like the A74, the A7S III, they seem to have a lot of the same codecs and whatnot that the FX30 and FX3 have, it just seems that at least for right now, they're not getting the same benefit of being able to change that metadata in DaVinci Resolve. Now, the files you're getting in the FX30 and all the other cameras mentioned, they're all 10-bit files. So you are making these changes to 10-bit, which leads me to talk about 10-bit video versus 12-bit video, because you do get 12-bit video out of the HDMI on the FX30 and the FX3, and you can only put that into basically an Atomos Ninja V, V+, and the new Ninja series, and it records in a ProRes RAW. So you may ask yourself, well, if I can record internally and get things like ISO and white balance changes, why would I want to record externally? And the reason would be if you need the extra data. You are dealing with 10-bit video versus 12-bit video. So if you're on a feature and you're trying to heavily grade the footage and push it really far, you could push 12-bit footage further than you could push 10-bit. But for the majority of people, 10-bit footage is definitely enough. So the other thing with the FX30 is that when you shoot in its RAW mode, it starts cropping in on the sensor, and It's a 6K sensor in this camera, and you get an active 4.7K crop in on the sensor to shoot in RAW. So when you're filming in the 10-bit video mode, you're using the full sensor, you're getting a 4K image downscaled from 6K, so you are going to get sharper video and less noise. So for me, I'm going to be doing some tests to see which I prefer. Now, I've already filmed a RAW test and I have yet to put it out, and I'm glad I came upon this. Thank you to Josh Satin to pointing this whole thing out. And I want to test whether it's worth actually filming in RAW externally now that a lot of the features I wanted, even though I have to do some transcoding, I can get in the 10-bit files. So if you have any questions, anything you want to see, make sure to ask in the comments below. And if you got knowledge and value out of today's video, please make sure to hit that like, subscribe, and notification bell to keep up to date with the latest videos on the channel. Until next time, my name is Geoff Fagien. Thank you for watching as always, everybody, and I will see you in the next video.